What's happening, everybody? I'm Yamite, back with a slightly different video this time. We're not here to talk about Thomas tapes or discuss the next episode for my theater commentaries. Now this time we're going to be talking about the episodes for the sister series of Thomas. You all know it, the UK show, TUGS. Now, I've said a few times before that I didn't really know so much about the UK dub, as my only way I was exposed to it was through the American adaptation, Salty's Lighthouse, which has not aged very well. I vaguely even remember this show. I do remember most of the animated characters, and I do remember at least one specific episode I saw as a kid. Only when I was properly reintroduced to the UK dub in 2010 did I recognize one character that sticks out like a sore thumb, and thus the interest in TUGS kicked in. I've also said that while I do like it, it's not necessarily my go-to show, if you get my meaning. There are other shows that are more my cup of tea, but that's not to say I don't like the show at all. I've grown a much bigger appreciation for this show in the last few years. So why am I doing this exactly? Well, in honor of a very belated TUGS Day, I thought it'd be appropriate to go through all the episodes and share my personal rankings for my least and personal favorite episodes. This was actually a little difficult until I was completely satisfied with my list. Keep in mind, these are all going to be based on my opinion, so please don't take any offense if I have an episode you like or don't like lower or higher on my list. So to kick off the list, we start off with my least favorite episode, Warrior. Yeah, not surprising that this is at the very bottom of the list. I think it's safe to assume that not a lot of people have this one as a favorite. It doesn't really give us anything new that we already don't know about Warrior as a character. We already know he's a very clumsy tugboat, and we know that he can be a bit of an oaf. Like, okay. I don't think it's bad, per se, but it is a little bit boring. It's more or less a filler episode than anything. Had they taken this episode out, nothing really would have changed. I guess maybe the one thing that I do like about this episode is how stupidly funny Izzy Gomez is. I just find it hilarious how he thinks he can get himself into port, and then ends up crashing into the rocks.
Dumbass!
And I guess it's nice that Warrior does get a bit of a redeeming factor by the end, but there are also some gripes I have with this. And the biggest one I have is with Zip and Zug. Like, I get the whole salvage thing, but there is a ship who is literally sinking in front of you. Put your biases aside, and could you maybe, I don't know, help for once in your life? Like I said, I don't think this episode is bad in any way. It just really didn't need to be a thing. Next on the list is Quarantine. This episode used to be in my top 5, but as I watched it a few more times, it's just okay. It is slightly better than Warrior, but not by very much. Obviously, the main focus is on OJ and his worn-out engine, which in a way is kinda sad seeing him struggle to go on. And let me say this, Burke and Blair are evil. Basically just moseying around waiting to spring in and just take OJ away.
That ancient engine of his is finished, and so is he. Isn't he, Mr. Burke?
We don't sit around our breaker's yard watching our staff turn old boats into scrap, do we, Mr. Blair?
Always on the lookout for who's next to go. That's our business, and OJ's top of our list.
Then you have the second part of the plot, which is all the ships docked outside of the harbor due to the infectious microbonic plague. And all ships docked outside must fly the quarantine flags. Otherwise you're out of service for 40 days. What I find really ironic is how this episode pretty much predicted COVID. Weird, right? One aspect that really pisses me off about this episode, no surprise, is Captain Star. I hate him in this one. And I know I'm not the first person who's complained about this.
You know the scrapyard dealers are looking for useless tugs, don't you? Now next time you're late, I'll ask them what they'll offer for a couple of switches, understand?
Wow, really? My guess would be that it was the heat wave causing him to act out like this, but they don't really cover that, so I don't really know. And again, the only thing I find funny is how Zoran, in typical Zed-Stack fashion, gets himself caught in a situation, and now is alongside an infected ship.
You dumbass!
Not one of the show's best episodes again, but it's also not bad either. It's just okay at best. Up next on the list is Jinxed. I'll bet there's a whole bunch of you with raised eyebrows thinking, why is this episode so low on my list? Well, it's really simple. The episode doesn't really do all that much for me. I think it's because it just feels like there's so much that's missing from it that it doesn't make it flow as nicely as other episodes, like 10 Cents' whistle being the possible cause of Boomer's jinx. Was there more to that? The subplot is just kinda there. I also find it funny how they never actually figured out what was causing the jinx. They think they have the answer, and then something else happens to contradict that. I was also unaware that they had planned other various incidents with Boomer's jinx, so a much longer cut of this episode would be very interesting to see. Also, I'm already preparing for a lot of backlash, but I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Boomer. Sure, there may be a few people who think he's a mood, but personally, I don't really care about him all that much.
Okay, Boomer!
His storyline concept, however, is a bit interesting, as I did not know about the old sea legends that a ship is cursed if you changed its name. But again, as a character, I just find him slightly annoying.
I wanted to sink, but instead I land right on top of an obstacle that doesn't let me. All I want to do is sink and become a home for the fishes. Then I won't jinx anyone.
Kind of like another character I know from another show.
Of course, if I were made of metal, I could look forward to rusting. But I suppose, can't have everything.
Not terrible by any means, but definitely not a favorite. Up next is Upriver. Now we have the first winter-themed episode. I was always 50-50 with this one. I'm okay with it, but it just seems to go a little slowly in the beginning. What strikes me as odd is how all these wet logs jammed together can easily catch fire. I didn't know that was a thing. And unlike what you were to see in a much earlier episode, with the second appearance of another character, Dynamite makes even more of a fuss, setting the logs downriver and crashing into everything in their path. Only for them to finally come to a stop by Warrior and smash into an abandoned warehouse where, of course, everything blows the up. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't slightly bothered by this. Like, did you really have to forcibly shoehorn an explosion for whatever the logs crashed into? However, I do like how they give Warrior another hero moment, much better than his Spotlight episode. Had there been a second season, this would have set up so much for Warrior's character arc and everyone else's opinions on him. As I said, had they removed the episode Warrior, nothing would have changed. They could have found a way to work around this, I think. Again, I'm fine with this episode. I just like other episodes a little bit more. And next on the list is Sunshine. And here we are at the pilot episode. A not too over-the-top but simple story that gives a little introduction to both the stars and Zed-Stack's fleet. This was another of the very first episodes that used to be in my top 5, but other stories very quickly took its place. I still really like this episode, but it's another that's not one of the best from the show. But I do like how they try to show us as many locations as they did to try and build up the world of TUGS. Kinda gives the audience this envision of what we are going to see as the series progresses. And also, this was the episode that kicked off my love for both 10 Cents and Sunshine. I just love seeing these two paired up together. A lot better than, say, that weird brother and sister counterpart, which I still don't get, let alone understand why they decided to do that.
Sunshine, hold up! Hey, you almost broke my bow!
Gee, are you hurt?
No, but
Then no problem, right?
wrong. You always steer your course without looking.
But I was going straight. You cut into my course.
Again, this may not be one of my favorites anymore, but it is still a very solid way to kick off the series. Next on the list is Trapped. This episode used to be at the very bottom of my list originally. Probably as low as Warrior. Back then, I just didn't care about it all that much, but in such time, it has climbed up the list. There's a lot of things that happen here that I just find so funny. Like Top Hat sticking his head all the way up,
Oh, I say hello!
Or Zoran getting stuck up on the rocks.
Oh, you got a problem there, Zoran. Oh, yeah?
Billy Shoepack is also a very interesting character. I remember being so thrown off by his appearance, as I've never seen a Tug like that, ever. However, his joking humor about dynamite never fails to get a small chuckle out of me.
You're not unloading next to us, are you?
Afraid so, OJ. Don't worry, if it goes up, we all go up.
Eh?
No, it's safe. Only joking.
You'd better be.
This is where I'll even mention that even though I'm not crazy about Top Hat as a character, some of his snarky remarks are pretty hysterical.
Help! I'm trapped!
What? Well, no more than the rest of us.
Right, leave it to me. None of you move.
Anyone going to move? I'm not going to move.
But I will say my favorite part is when the dynamite explodes and all the Tugs get washed away downriver in this wacky and very fun scene with a very zany soundtrack. Not a personal favorite, but still really good. Up next is High Tide. Once again, another of the 13 that used to be a little lower on my list, but has climbed up drastically. And it's no secret as to why. From Zebedee trying to beat out Top Hat, to the bridge collapse, everything in this entire sequence is awesome.
That's real zero thinking, W.
The storyline itself is such a tension build-up, and you immediately get that when you hear the mail train's whistle. Then Top Hat pulls the rig underneath, and you think everything is okay for a slight minute, until the rig tips, and the bridge collapses, because it's typical Tugs. The whistle sound of the goods train comes, and immediately the tension builds right back up. Then that catchy and oh so satisfying rescue music kicks in, and both Lord Stinker and Top Hat stop the oncoming train. Can you not see how amazing this is? I could have swore I saw this particular scene somewhere in a Salty's Lighthouse episode, but my memory is very foggy. I do remember seeing Lord Stinker in some episodes, so I've yet to confirm what episode of SL I saw this sequence on. One quick thing to mention is how this episode also kinda gave me a little more of a small likeness to Top Hat. Bear in mind, as I said already, Top Hat is not exactly one of my favorite characters, because most of the time he comes off as such a dick. But this little moment of his actually showed more of how true he is to the star name. This is why he deserves to be a Star Tug. A pretty phenomenal episode. And just missing out on the top 5 is Big Freeze, the finale episode. Compared to Upriver, there's just something about this one that I find a little more amusing. Mostly because of the nighttime visuals, which I'm always a sucker for. The plot of this episode, though, is a little similar to Trapped, but I think on a more serious level.
Not an idea between us?
No bright ones, Oja.
Anybody got a stupid one, then?
I'd be lying again if I said I didn't have one small gripe. Zip and Zug. They are so annoyingly stupid in this one, it's unbelievable. I'll say this, if they got arrested or whatever by the fire chief at the end, you know what? Serves them right. That's what you get for being stupid. Obviously, the best part about this episode is the graceful beauty of the SS Vienna. Then that beautiful piece kicks in, and all the stars and Z-Stacks watch as she floats away to the Tugs theme. What a lovely way to end off the show. So to kick off my top 5, we have High Winds. This one is uniquely dark. Here we have not only a one-time Z-Stack character arc story, but a story that features a gangster character, that being Johnny Cuba. I'm amazed that an episode like this was even approved. I'm not sure if this is how some scenarios worked back then, but it really wouldn't surprise me. I really like Johnny Cuba as a character. He is such a badass in a good and bad way. Good in the sense because I love his antagonizing and very threatening demeanor, but in the bad way because he really is a dangerous threat, specifically to Zebedee.
Now I need coal right away, and be quick about it or I'll break your stick.
Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
And don't try anything fancy, or you'll find yourself at the bottom of the harbour with cement in your hold.
I'm also curious to know what kind of shady work did Zero and Johnny do together, and what happened between them that made the two fall out with each other. However, the big aspect that I really adore about this episode is how much we see more of Zebedee's character. They always depicted him as this typical snarky Z-Stack, but here there's a deeper dig into him that a lot of people seem to overlook. You can really tell he struggles between both sides. He tries to pass himself off as this big, strong, tough guy tugboat, but when caught in a situation, you can see how easily he gives into fear. On another note, he does have a heart of gold somewhere deep down, as he's displayed this on multiple occasions with 10 Cents and Sunshine, as much as Zoran despises this. This is why Zebedee is my favorite of the Z-Stacks. He's such a uniquely written character. I only wish, had there been a season 2, that they probably would have done more with him. Coming in at number 4 is Regatta. Once again, a lot of stuff happens in this one. You have Lily nearly sinking after being hit by the tramper, and yeah, I know exactly what this looks like, get your mind out of the gutter, people. Then you have Grampus, who does whatever to save Lily, and what does he get in return? Blue Nose and the Navy decide he's too old and want to blow him up for target practice.
That is correct.
And the fact that Grampus is so chill with this is a bit disturbing. I think the only plotline that I'm not really fond of is the whole thing with this municipal garbage float. It doesn't really flow that well with the main plot, but that doesn't make it bad. Even so, when you have this iconic scene.
Morning, Jack. Nice day for garbage.
There's no garbage today.
What do you mean, no garbage today?
No garbage today.
We all need garbage.
It's a festival day or something, so there's no garbage.
I will say that my favorite part is when the tugs parade out on the open water to save Grampus. You can really feel the tension build up again, especially when you hear the Navy siren go off.
That's the destroyer warning us we're in the danger zone!
Ignore it!
What do you mean? And get a direct hit? No, thank you very much.
And the parade at the end is always a very fun scene to watch, capping it off with a happy ending with Grampus now an official member of the Starfleet. A very well-deserving spot in my top 5. Coming in at number 3 is Munitions. And now we're at the crazy action-packed episode that everybody knows and always talks about. And it's perfectly understandable why. Crazy out-of-control fires, explosions, 10 Cents almost dies, plus one character that actually does? Like, how did they get this approved for a kids show? You can just tell that the crew had a blast making this episode, no pun intended. Right from the beginning, you can just sense that hint of tension from the moment we first meet Blue Nose, who, for the record, bugs the ever-living hell out of me. Then again, I think he pisses off a lot of people. His officious but very obnoxious and careless behavior, giving out orders on how to do or what to do, you can just tell that something is about to go down. And sure enough, one bump to the barge, and all hell breaks loose. From here on out, the episode does an amazingly superb job. Storyline, visuals, and music, everything nailed. For those who may haven't seen this episode, which, how could you not, go and give it a watch. You're in for one hell of a wild ride. Coming up in the second spot is Pirate. This was actually the first episode I watched in full before I saw the rest of the episodes. Like I said before, I remembered a whole lot of the scenes from this because of the one Salty's Lighthouse episode, Who Took My Crayons. So after I found that, I had to see the full 20-minute cut, and I was blown away. I can't believe they got away with yet another story that contains such a dark and heavy topic. Basically, a hostage life and death situation. Something that you would never see in today's kids shows. They really didn't sugarcoat it when they were literally going to kill Sea Rogue's uncle, and the fact that his uncle tells him to just leave him there.
It's one more barge. Get it tonight or it's goodbye to him. Davy Jones's locker on the seabed.
You all right? Not hurt, are you? I'm okay, but don't do it. It's wrong.
I can't leave you here with them, old man.
Like, damn. I also really like Sea Rogue as a character. He starts off as this really shady tug, only to find out that he's willing to risk anything to save his uncle. However you want to look at him, he's in a pretty difficult situation no matter what he tries to do. And also, the chase scene with Zip, Zug, and the Green-Eyed Pirates is another one of my very favorite scenes. Another one of the show's best written episodes. And finally, in the number 1 spot, we have Ghosts. In actuality, this episode was partially responsible for my big interest in the paranormal. I've always been fascinated by all these different types of ghost stories, and I also love hearing if anybody has had their own personal paranormal experiences. Hell, I've actually had my own experience when I was a young teenager. I'm already preparing for a lot of people to not believe me on this, but I can tell you for a fact, I am not making this up. This is all 100% true. I won't get too engrossed with the details. If you want to read my full story, link is in the description to my DeviantArt. But back to the episode. They absolutely nailed it with the spooky atmosphere for this story. From the foggy-like conditions to the quote-unquote ghost tugs, I mean, they went all out. My favorite scene out of the whole episode is definitely when 10 Cents and Sunshine see the rising galleon and Neptune's face in the fog. Visually, it's amazing, and the soundtrack hands down is one of my favorites. Big thumbs up to Mike and Jr., you magnificent legends. One final thing I will say is I thought it was pretty cleverly written that the Tugs, as well as the audience, don't know if King Neptune's face was actually there or were 10 Cents and Sunshine just going insane. We'll never know, and that's why I love that hint of mystery tied in with this episode. I could basically go on forever with how amazing this episode is, but from what I've explained, that is why this episode is by far my favorite of the whole show.